Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's horizon and watched the stars drift past the main screen. His ship moved through space at a steady pace toward the Kepler system where 3 different alien races had asked for help with a trade dispute. This was the kind of work humans did best in the galaxy, keeping peace and making sure everyone got along. The year was 2387, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Federation for over 200 years. In all that time, humans had never started a war or even fired the first shot in any fight. Other races called them the Gentle Giants because humans were big and strong, but always chose to talk instead of fight. Some aliens thought this made humans weak, but Jake knew better. His people simply believed that violence should always be the last choice. Lisa Parker walked over to his command chair with a datapad in her hands. She was his chief science officer and had been with him for 5 years. Lisa was smart and careful and always made sure they had all the facts before making any decisions. Captain, the Zephyrians have been causing more trouble in the outer systems, she said quietly so the rest of the bridge crew would not hear. 3 more human trade ships have gone missing near their space in the last month. Jake took the data pad and read the reports. The Zephyrian Empire was made up of insect-like beings who loved war and conquest. They had been expanding their territory for decades and seemed to enjoy making other races afraid of them. War Commander Vextar led their military, and he made no secret of the fact that he thought humans were cowards, who hid behind diplomacy because they were too scared to fight. Any word from the Federation Council about this? Jake asked as he handed the pad back to Lisa. She shook her head and looked worried. They keep saying they need more evidence before they can act. The Zephyrians claimed the ships just had accidents or were destroyed by pirates. Ryan Cole looked up from his engineering station. He was a quiet man who kept the ship running perfectly and never complained about anything. Captain, I have been monitoring Zephyrian military communications, he said in his soft voice. They are not even trying to hide what they are doing. Their commanders are bragging about attacking human vessels and calling us weak for not fighting back. Amy Turner turned around in her communications chair. She handled all contact with other ships and alien governments and was very good at reading between the lines when aliens tried to lie or hide things. Sir, I have been getting reports from human colonies near Zephyrian space. They are scared and asking for protection. Some families are already packing up to leave their homes. Jake felt a familiar anger start to build in his chest, but he pushed it down like he had been trained to do since childhood. Humans learned early that their emotions could be very strong, and that they needed to control them carefully. Getting angry solved nothing and usually made problems worse. Send a message to Admiral Brooks at Earth Command, he told Amy. Tell her we need to have a diplomatic meeting with the Zephyrians as soon as possible. The bridge was quiet for a moment as everyone went back to their work. Jake stared at the main screen and thought about his younger brother Danny, who lived on New Haven colony with his wife and 2 small children. New Haven was a farming world where humans grew food to trade with other races. It was peaceful and beautiful and exactly the kind of place the Zephyrians seemed to enjoy attacking. 3 days later, the horizon was still traveling toward the Kepler system when Amy suddenly sat up straight at her station. Captain, I am getting a distress signal, she said with worry in her voice. It is coming from New Haven Colony. Jake felt his heart skip a beat. Put it on the main screen, he ordered. The star field disappeared and was replaced by static and broken images. Through the interference, they could see smoke and fire and destroyed buildings. A human voice came through the speakers, but it was hard to understand because of all the noise and explosions in the background. This is New Haven Colony calling any human ship, the voice said between bursts of static. We are under attack by Zephyrian forces. They came without warning and started bombing everything. The defense shields are down and we have no weapons to fight back with. Please send help immediately. We have women and children here who cannot defend themselves. The signal cut out completely and left only empty static. Jake stared at the blank screen and felt something cold settle in his stomach. Lisa ran to her science station and started scanning for any other signals from New Haven. Ryan began checking their engines to see how fast they could get there. Amy tried desperately to re-establish contact with the colony. After 20 minutes of trying, Lisa looked up with tears in her eyes. "Captain, I am not detecting any life signs from New Haven. The entire colony appears to be destroyed. All 50,000 people who live there are gone." Jake closed his eyes and thought about Danny and his family. He remembered the last message his brother had sent just 2 weeks ago. Danny had been excited because his daughter had taken her first steps and his son had started school. Now they were all dead because the Zephyrians wanted to prove that humans were weak and would not fight back, no matter what happened to them. The bridge was completely silent as everyone realized what this meant. For over 2 centuries, humans had absorbed attacks and insults and threats without ever responding with violence. They had always found peaceful ways to solve problems and had never given in to anger or hatred. But now 50,000 innocent people were dead, including children who had never hurt anyone. Jake opened his eyes and looked around at his crew. He saw the same cold fury in their faces that he felt growing inside himself. This was not just another attack on human property, or another insult to human dignity. This was mass murder of defenseless civilians, and it could not be ignored or forgiven or solved with diplomacy. "Set course for New Haven," Jake said in a voice that was quiet but somehow filled with deadly promise. "Maximum speed." The U's horizon dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Haven system, and Jake Morrison felt his heart break. Where the beautiful blue and green farming world should have been, there was now only a burned wasteland covered in smoke and ash. The orbital stations that had welcomed trade ships from across the galaxy were nothing but twisted metal floating in space. Lisa Parker worked frantically at her science station trying to find any signs of life on the planet surface. Her hands shook as she adjusted the sensors again and again, hoping to detect even one survivor hiding somewhere in the ruins. "Captain, there are no human life signs anywhere in the system," she reported with tears running down her face. "The Zephyrians used plasma bombs to burn everything. Nothing could have survived those temperatures." Ryan Cole stood behind his engineering console staring at the readings from the planet. His usually calm face was hard as stone and his hands were clenched into fists. "They did not just destroy the colony, Captain," he said in a voice that was barely above a whisper. "They made sure to target the schools and hospitals first. This was not a military attack. This was deliberate murder designed to cause maximum suffering." Amy Turner monitored the communication channels but found only silence where once there had been the happy chatter of farmers and families living peaceful lives. "Sir, I am detecting Zephyrian ship signatures throughout the system," she said. "They stayed here for hours after the attack was finished. They wanted to make sure every last person was dead." Jake ordered the ship to enter orbit around New Haven so they could conduct a full investigation. What they found in the ruins made even experienced space travelers sick to their stomachs. The Zephyrians had not been content with simple destruction. They had landed troops on the surface and hunted down any humans who had survived the initial bombing. The evidence was clear in the burned remains of the colony. Families had been rounded up and forced to watch as their children were killed in front of them. The Zephyrians had recorded everything and broadcast the torture sessions across subspace frequencies as a message to any humans who might be listening. They wanted all of humanity to know that this was what happened to people who refused to fight back. Lisa found the personal belongings of Jake's brother Danny scattered in what had been his home. A small toy spaceship that belonged to Danny's son lay melted in the ashes next to a family photo that had somehow survived the flames. Jake picked up the photo and stared at the faces of his brother's family. They had been good people who had never hurt anyone and had spent their lives growing food to feed hungry aliens across the galaxy. "Captain," Amy called from the communication station, "I am receiving an emergency transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Brooks wants to speak with you immediately." The main screen flickered and showed Admiral Karen Brooks sitting in her office at Earth Defense Headquarters. She was a tough woman who had spent 40 years keeping human space safe through diplomacy and careful planning. But now her face was pale and her eyes were filled with a cold anger that Jake had never seen before. "Jake, I just received your preliminary report about New Haven," she said without any greeting. "Is it true that 50,000 civilians are dead, including children?" "Yes, Admiral," Jake replied. "The Zephyrians killed everyone and made sure we would know they enjoyed doing it. They broadcast the torture sessions across subspace so other humans would see what happened." Admiral Brooks was quiet for a long moment as she processed this information. "Jake, I want you to continue your investigation and document everything you find. We are going to need complete evidence of what happened here. The Human Colonial Council is meeting in emergency session, and there are going to be some very difficult decisions made in the next few hours after the transmission ended." Jake and his crew spent the next 12 hours cataloging the horror that the Zephyrians had left behind. They found mass graves where hundreds of bodies had been dumped without ceremony. They found the remains of the colony school where Zephyrian soldiers had lined up children and shot them one by one while their parents watched. They found evidence that some colonists had been kept alive for days just so the Zephyrians could experiment with different ways to cause pain. Lisa worked without stopping to analyze the data they collected. Her usually neat appearance became disheveled as she pushed herself beyond normal human limits, trying to understand the full scope of the massacre. "Captain," she said after 18 hours of continuous work, "I have finished my analysis. The Zephyrians used weapons specifically designed to cause maximum suffering rather than quick death. They wanted these people to die slowly and in agony." Ryan Cole had been unusually quiet during the investigation, but now he spoke up with a voice that was completely different from his normal gentle tone. "Captain, I have been running some calculations based on what we found here. The Zephyrians had to bring at least 50 ships to carry out this attack. This was not some random raid or accident. This was a planned military operation designed specifically to kill human civilians." Amy Turner looked up from her station where she had been monitoring communications from across human space. "Sir, news of New Haven is spreading to every human colony and ship in the galaxy. People are angry in a way I have never seen before. Colony defense coordinators are asking for permission to arm their stations. Ship captains are requesting military escort for their cargo runs. Everyone wants to know what we are going to do about this." Jake felt something change inside himself as he listened to his crew. For his entire life he had been taught that violence was wrong and that there was always a peaceful solution to any problem. Humans were supposed to be better than the warlike races who used force to get what they wanted. But looking at the evidence of what had happened to his brother and 50,000 other innocent people, Jake began to understand that sometimes peace was not enough. "Amy, send a message to every human ship and colony in the galaxy," he ordered. "Tell them that New Haven was completely destroyed by Zephyrian forces. Tell them that there were no survivors and that the attack was deliberate murder of unarmed civilians, including children. Make sure everyone knows exactly what happened here." The communication officer nodded and began transmitting Jake's message across the human communication network. Within hours, the news would reach every human settlement from Earth to the farthest colonial outposts. For the first time in over 2 centuries, humanity would have to decide whether their commitment to peace was more important than their need For justice. Jake walked to the main view screen and stared down at the burned remains of New Haven Colony. Somewhere in those ashes were the bodies of his brother and his brother's children. They had died because they believed that being peaceful and kind would protect them from those who chose violence and cruelty. "Captain," Lisa said quietly as she joined him at the view screen. "What are we going to do now?" Jake was quiet for a long time before he answered. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a promise that would have frightened anyone who knew him well enough to recognize what it meant. "We are going to make sure this never happens again, Lisa. Whatever it takes and whatever the cost, we are going to make sure that no human children ever die like this again." Behind them, Amy's communication station began receiving messages from across human space. Colony after colony reported the same thing. For the first time in centuries, humans were asking not for diplomatic solutions or peaceful negotiations. They were asking for something that had not been heard in human space for over 200 years. They were asking for war. Admiral Karen Brooks stood in the main conference room at Earth Defense Headquarters and looked at the faces of the most powerful humans in the galaxy. The Human Colonial Council had been meeting for 16 straight hours, and the debate had grown more heated with each passing minute. Some council members still believed that diplomacy could solve the crisis, but their voices were becoming quieter. As more reports came in from the investigation at New Haven, General Alex Carter sat at the far end of the table studying classified military files that had not been opened for over a century. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold blue eyes who had spent his entire career preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said in a voice that cut through the arguing, "we need to face the reality of our situation. The Zephyrians have committed an act of genocide against human civilians. They have made it clear that they view our peaceful nature as weakness to be exploited." Dr. Martin Hayes looked up from his datapad where he had been reviewing the forensic evidence from New Haven. He was the head of human xenobiology research and had spent decades studying alien races to better understand how to interact with them peacefully. "General, the biological evidence we collected shows that the Zephyrians specifically chose torture methods that would cause maximum psychological trauma. They studied human anatomy and psychology to make their victims suffer as much as possible. Before death, this was not random violence. This was calculated cruelty designed to break our will to resist." Admiral Brooks activated the main display screen and showed the assembled council members the final message that had been broadcast from New Haven before the colony was destroyed. The voice of Colony Administrator Helen Ross could be heard clearly as she begged for help while explosions echoed in the background. "Please," the woman's voice said through the static, "we have children here who have never hurt anyone. Why are they doing this to us? We offered them food and medical supplies. We tried to help them and they are killing us for it." The recording ended with the sound of plasma weapons firing and then only silence. Several council members wiped tears from their eyes as they realized that 50,000 people had died begging for mercy that never came. The Zephyrians had not just killed them. They had made sure they died in terror and despair. "The Galactic Federation has offered to mediate this dispute," said Council Member Patricia Wells, who still hoped for a peaceful solution. "Surely we can find some way to resolve this without resorting to violence ourselves." General Carter stood up and walked to the display screen. "Patricia, with all due respect, the Federation has been mediating disputes with the Zephyrians for 30 years. In that time, they have conquered 14 star systems and enslaved or killed billions of sentient beings. Mediation only works when both sides want peace. The Zephyrians want conquest, and they have decided that humans are their next target." Admiral Brooks activated another display that showed a map of human space with red markers indicating Zephyrian attacks over the past year. "The Council needs to understand that New Haven was not an isolated incident," she said grimly. "We have lost 7 colonies to Zephyrian attacks in the past 6 months. They have been testing our defenses and studying our responses. They are preparing for a full-scale invasion of human space." Dr. Hayes stood up and addressed the Council with the authority of someone who had spent his life studying alien behavior. "I have analyzed Zephyrian psychology and military doctrine for 20 years. They are a predator species that respects only strength and views compassion as a fatal weakness. Every time we have responded to their attacks with diplomatic protests, they have interpreted it as proof that we are cowards who can be killed without consequence." The room fell silent as the Council members absorbed this information. For over 2 centuries, humanity had built its reputation on being the peacemakers of the galaxy. They were the species that other races called when they needed help solving problems without violence. The idea of deliberately choosing war went against everything they had believed about themselves. "What exactly are you proposing, General?" asked Council Chairman Robert King, who had been listening quietly to the debate. General Carter walked back to his seat and opened a classified file that was marked with warning symbols that most humans had never seen before. "I am proposing that we activate Protocol 7, he said quietly. "Full military mobilization of all human assets with authorization to use any means necessary to eliminate the Zephyrian threat permanently." The Council chamber erupted in shocked voices as the members realized what the General was suggesting. Protocol 7 was a theoretical military doctrine that had been developed during humanity's early years in space, when they were still afraid of being conquered by hostile aliens. Most people assumed it was just a historical curiosity that would never be used. "General," said Admiral Brooks, "Protocol 7 has not been activated for over 200 years. Most of our ship crews do not even know it exists. Are you certain that our forces are still capable of implementing it?" Admiral Carter replied with a thin smile. "Every human ship captain in the fleet has been trained on Protocol 7 procedures, whether they know it or not. Every exploration vessel in our fleet was designed with hidden military capabilities that can be activated within hours. We have been preparing for this day since we first left Earth, even though we hoped it would never come." Dr. Hayes opened his own classified files and began reading from data that had been collected over decades of peaceful contact with alien species. "Council members, I need you to understand something that we have never discussed publicly. Every diplomatic mission, every cultural exchange, every scientific collaboration we have conducted with alien races has also served as intelligence-gathering operations. We have detailed files on the weaknesses and vulnerabilities of every species in the galaxy, not because we plan to use this information aggressively, but because knowledge is the best defense against those who might wish us harm." Admiral Brooks activated the communication system and contacted Captain Jake Morrison aboard the UES Horizon, which was still investigating the ruins of New Haven. "Captain," she said when his face appeared on the screen, "how are you and your crew holding up?" Jake looked tired and older than his 40 years, but his eyes burned with a cold fire that had not been there before the massacre. "Admiral, we have completed our investigation and documented everything we found. The evidence is clear that this was a deliberate act of genocide designed to terrorize the human population into submission." "Captain," General Carter interrupted, "I need to ask you a direct question. If the Council authorizes military action against the Zephyrian Empire, are you and your crew prepared to carry out combat operations?" Jake was quiet for a moment as he considered the question. Behind him on the bridge, Lisa Parker and Ryan Cole and Amy Turner listened carefully to hear his answer. "General," he finally said, 3 days ago I would have told you that humans should never choose violence over diplomacy. But after seeing What happened to my brother and his children and 50,000 other innocent people? I have learned something about myself and about humanity that I never wanted to know. We are capable of things that would terrify our enemies if they understood. What we truly are beneath our peaceful exterior, General Carter nodded grimly. Captain, in 6 hours you will receive new orders that will activate capabilities of your ship that you did not know existed. I need you to be prepared for the fact that the UES Horizon is not actually an exploration vessel. It is a military dreadnought that has been disguised as a peaceful research ship for over a decade. The council members stared at the screen in shock as they realized that their entire understanding of human space capabilities had been deliberately hidden from them. Admiral Brooks stood up and addressed the assembled leaders. Ladies and gentlemen, the time for debate is over. The Zephyrians have forced us to reveal what we truly are. I am formally requesting authorization to activate Protocol 7 and show the galaxy why humanity's anger was feared long before we reached the stars. The transformation began exactly 72 hours after the Human Colonial Council voted to activate Protocol 7. Across human space, every civilian vessel received the same message broadcast on emergency frequencies that had not been used for over 2 centuries. All human civilian craft returned to designated safe harbors immediately. Hellstorm Protocol is now in effect. Repeat, Hellstorm Protocol is now in effect. Captain Sam Bishop sat in the command chair of what every alien government believed was a heavy cargo transport called the UES Retribution. The ship's official records showed that it carried farming equipment and medical supplies to remote colonies. Those records were lies. The Retribution was actually a dreadnought-class warship with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets, and it was about to reveal its true nature to the galaxy. Captain, said his weapons officer, Lieutenant Dan Foster, all primary systems are coming online. The disguise plating is retracting and our main guns are deploying. We will be ready for combat operations in 20 minutes. Bishop watched through the main view screen as his ship transformed from a peaceful cargo hauler into an instrument of war that would have given nightmares to anyone who understood what they were seeing. The Retribution was not unique. Across human space, hundreds of ships were undergoing the same transformation as Protocol 7 turned humanity's exploration fleet into the most advanced military force the galaxy had ever seen. Communications, Bishop ordered, contact Admiral Brooks and inform her that Battle Group Alpha is ready to begin operations against Zephyrian positions in the Kepler sector on the bridge of the UES Horizon. Jake Morrison watched his own ship reveal its hidden capabilities. Ryan Cole worked at the engineering station with a skill and knowledge that showed he was far more than just a repair technician. His real job had been to maintain the ship's military systems while keeping them hidden from anyone who might discover the truth about human space capabilities. Captain Cole said as weapon systems that had been concealed for years deployed from hidden compartments. All stealth generators are online. We can phase between normal space and subspace, which will make us invisible to Zephyrian sensors. Our plasma cannons are designed specifically to target Zephyrian nerve centers based on the biological data we collected during diplomatic missions. Lisa Parker stared at her science station in amazement as new displays activated to show her information about alien weaknesses and military tactics that she had never known existed. Jake, she said quietly, how long has the ship been capable of this? Since the day it was launched, Jake replied. Every human ship in space was built with hidden military capabilities that could be activated if we were ever forced to abandon our peaceful policies. We hoped this day would never come, but we were prepared for it. Amy Turner monitored communications from across the galaxy as alien governments tried to understand what was happening to humanity's supposedly peaceful fleet. Captain, I am intercepting Zephyrian military transmissions. Their commanders are confused by the energy signatures our ships are showing. They think their sensors are malfunctioning because the readings suggest we have technology far beyond anything we have ever displayed. War Commander Vextar stood in the command center of the Zephyrian battle station orbiting Kepler 442 and studied the reports his officers were giving him. According to their sensors, human ships were appearing throughout the system, but the energy readings made no sense. The vessels that had been cataloged as exploration ships and cargo haulers were now showing power signatures that rivaled Zephyrian dreadnoughts. "Commander," said his tactical officer, "our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy buildups throughout human space. It appears that their entire civilian fleet is undergoing some kind of transformation, but our computers cannot analyze. What is happening?" Vextar dismissed the reports as sensor errors caused by solar interference. He had studied humans for years and knew they were a weak species that avoided conflict whenever possible. The destruction of New Haven Colony had been designed to prove that humans would accept any level of abuse rather than fight back. The idea that they might actually possess hidden military capabilities was impossible to believe. "Increase patrols around our forward positions," he ordered. "If the humans are planning some kind of diplomatic protest, we need to be ready to intercept their negotiation teams and show them what happens to species that challenge Zephyrian authority." 3 hours later, the first human battle group dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. Captain Bishop's dreadnought Retribution led 5 other warships that had spent years disguised as peaceful research vessels. When they decloaked and revealed their true nature, the Zephyrian defenders realized they were facing something completely unexpected. "Zephyrian vessels," Bishop broadcast on open frequencies, "you are in violation of Galactic Federation law regarding the protection of civilian populations. You have 72 hours to surrender all personnel responsible for the New Haven massacre or face immediate military action." Vextar laughed when he heard the human ultimatum. "Humans," he broadcast back, "you are not a military species. You do not have the stomach for real war. Return to your colonies and continue growing food for your betters, or we will destroy you just like we destroyed the weaklings on New Haven." Bishop's response was immediate and devastating. The Retribution fired a single plasma bolt that passed completely through the Zephyrian battle station's shields and destroyed their main power core. The massive structure went dark and began drifting helplessly in space as emergency systems failed throughout the facility. "Attention Zephyrian forces," Bishop announced calmly, "that was a demonstration shot. You now have 71 hours and 59 minutes to comply with our demands. Any hostile action will result in the complete destruction of all Zephyrian assets in this system." Jake Morrison's ship Horizon materialized out of subspace directly behind the Zephyrian fleet formation. The aliens had not even detected his approach because human stealth technology was centuries ahead of anything they possessed. Ryan Cole had modified the ship's weapons to target specific Zephyrian neural pathways that would cause maximum fear and confusion without immediate death. Captain Cole reported, "I have targeting solutions on all enemy vessels. Our neural disruptors will leave their crews alive but completely helpless. They will experience the same terror that the colonists on New Haven felt before they died." Lisa Parker monitored the alien communications as panic spread through the Zephyrian fleet. "Jake, they are trying to call for reinforcements, but our jamming systems are blocking all their transmissions. They cannot warn their commanders about what is happening here." The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Human ships that had pretended to be peaceful for decades revealed weapon systems that turned space combat into a precise art form. Zephyrian vessels that had conquered dozens of worlds found themselves completely outmatched by technology they had never imagined existed, but the most terrifying aspect of the human attack was not their superior weapons or tactics. It was there. Restraint. Every shot was calculated to disable rather than destroy. Every target was chosen to maximize psychological impact while minimizing actual casualties. The humans were demonstrating that they could have annihilated the entire Zephyrian fleet in seconds, but were choosing not to do so. When the fighting ended, Vexstar found himself trapped on his disabled command ship watching human boarding parties systematically capture every Zephyrian officer involved in planning the New Haven attack. The humans moved through his vessel with a precision that spoke of years of planning and preparation for exactly this type of operation. Captain Morrison materialized on the bridge of Vexstar's ship and stood looking down at the Zephyrian commander, with eyes that burned with controlled fury. "War Commander," he said in perfect Zephyrian language, "you wanted to see what humans are really like beneath our peaceful exterior. Consider this your first lesson." Vexstar stared up at the human, and Finvi, for the first time in his life, felt true fear. This was not the weak diplomatic species he had studied. This was something far more dangerous. This was a predator that had been pretending to be prey, and the deception was now over. "What are you going to do with us?" Vexstar asked as human soldiers secured his bridge crew. Jake smiled, but there was no warmth in the expression. "We are going to give you the same trial you gave the children on New Haven," he said quietly. "But we are going to do it properly with evidence and witnesses and legal procedures. You see, War Commander, that is the difference between your species and mine. When we kill, it will be justice, not murder." The Zephyrian High Command sent surrender messages to Admiral Brooks after only 6 days of warfare, but she rejected every offer without even reading the terms. The human fleet had swept through 3 Zephyrian star systems like a force of nature, destroying military installations while carefully avoiding civilian targets. What terrified the Zephyrians was not just humanity's overwhelming military superiority, but their cold, methodical approach to warfare that showed no mercy for those who had chosen to make war on innocents. General Alex Carter established what he called processing centers on captured Zephyrian military bases where war criminals were held for interrogation and trial. The humans had studied Zephyrian psychology for decades and knew exactly how to break down their mental defenses without resorting to the crude torture methods the aliens had used on human colonists. Instead, they used psychological techniques that left no physical marks but reduced hardened warriors to sobbing confessions within hours. The key to understanding Zephyrian behavior, Dr. Martin Hayes explained to a group of human interrogators, is that they are hive-minded insects who cannot function as individuals. Separate them from their command structure and they become helpless. Make them watch recordings of their victims' suffering, and they will tell you everything because they cannot process the guilt of what they have done. Captain Jake Morrison led the assault on the Zephyrian homeworld, where the species had ruled over dozens of conquered races for centuries. The planet's orbital defenses had never been breached by any enemy, but human ships phased through their shield barriers as if they did not exist. The Zephyrian military leadership watched in horror as their impregnable fortress world was invaded by beings they had dismissed as weak farmers and scientists. "Captain," reported Ryan Cole from his engineering station, "I am detecting massive underground bunkers where the Zephyrian leadership is hiding. Our deep scan sensors show they have taken their families and essential government personnel to reinforced shelters 3 kilometers below the surface." Jake studied the tactical display and made a decision that would have shocked anyone who knew him before the New Haven massacre. "Use the molecular disintegration charges," he ordered calmly. "I want those bunkers open, but I want the occupants alive and unharmed. They are going to face trial for what they did, and they are going to do it in front of the entire galaxy, Lisa." Parker monitored the alien communication networks as news of humanity's true nature spread throughout the galaxy. "Jake," she said quietly, "other species are terrified. The Galactic Federation Council is meeting in emergency session to discuss whether humans have become a threat to galactic stability. Some races are talking about forming alliances to contain us. Let them talk, Jake replied without taking his eyes off the tactical display. For 2 centuries we absorbed their insults and their attacks, because we believed that peace was more important than justice. The galaxy is about to learn that we were not weak. We were simply choosing to be merciful, and that choice can be revoked. War Commander Vextar was brought before Jake in the ruins of the Zephyrian Command Center, where he had planned the destruction of human colonies. The once proud military leader was now a broken creature who could barely stand upright. Days of psychological interrogation had shattered his confidence and left him fully aware of the magnitude of his crimes against innocent civilians. Human Vextar said in a voice that shook with fear, "We surrender completely. We will accept any terms you offer. Please stop this demonstration of your capabilities. We understand now that we made a terrible mistake in challenging your species." Jake walked slowly around the captured Zephyrian commander, studying him with the cold analytical gaze of a predator examining wounded prey. "War Commander," he said in perfect Zephyrian, "you seem to think this is a negotiation. You seem to believe that you can surrender and return to your old life with some minor penalties for your crimes. You are mistaken." Dr. Hayes entered the command center carrying a sealed container that made Vextar instinctively back away in terror. Captain Hayes said, "I have prepared the biological warfare agent as requested. This virus will render the Zephyrian homeworld uninhabitable for their species, but it will take 3 generations to complete its work. The dying will be slow and inevitable unless they accept our terms completely." Vextar fell to his knees as he realized that the humans had developed weapons specifically designed to exterminate his entire species. "Please," he begged. "We have civilians on this world who are not involved in military operations. Surely you would not kill innocent beings just for revenge." Jake knelt down so he was looking directly into Vextar's compound eyes. "War Commander," he said softly, "did you show mercy to the innocent civilians on New Haven? Did you spare the children who had never hurt anyone? Did you listen when they begged for their lives just as you are begging now?" The Zephyrian leader began to weep as he understood that the humans were going to give him exactly the same consideration he had shown to their people. "We were wrong," he sobbed. "We thought you were weak because you chose not to fight. We did not understand that you were simply being merciful, and that mercy was a choice you could take away. You have 2 options," Jake continued in the same quiet voice. "Option 1 is that I release this virus and your entire species dies slowly. Over the next century, while we broadcast your suffering across the galaxy as a warning to other races who might consider attacking human civilians. Option 2 is that you accept complete surrender with permanent human oversight of all Zephyrian territory and activities." Vextar looked up at Jake with eyes that held the desperate hope of a condemned prisoner. "What would permanent oversight mean for my people?" Dr. Hayes opened the container slightly, and Vextar could smell the chemical scent of the bioweapon that would doom his species. "It means," Jake said, "that every Zephyrian world will have human administrators who monitor your government and military. It means that any act of aggression against any species will result in immediate retaliation. It means that your children will learn human ethics and human values so they understand why violence against innocents is wrong." "And if we refuse?" Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer. Jake stood up and gestured for Dr. Hayes to prepare the virus for release. "Then in 100 years there will be no Zephyrians left in the galaxy, and other species will know exactly what happens to those who murder human children." The war commander looked around the ruined command center where his people had planned so many conquests and committed so many atrocities. He thought about the billions of Zephyrians on dozens of worlds who would die horrible deaths if he refused the human terms. He thought about the human colonists his forces had tortured and killed for no reason other than to prove their strength. "I accept complete surrender," he said finally. "My people will submit to human authority and will never again raise weapons against any species. Please do not destroy us." Jake nodded and signaled Dr. Hayes to secure the bioweapon. "War Commander," he said, "your people called us weak because we preferred peace to war. You thought our mercy was a sign of cowardice. You have learned that we are not weak. We are simply strong enough to choose mercy when it is appropriate and justice when mercy is not enough." Amy Turner's voice came through Jake's communication device from the horizon. "Captain, I am receiving surrender offers from every Zephyrian, military commander in the galaxy. They are all requesting immediate ceasefire and negotiations." Jake looked down at Vexstar, who was still kneeling in the rubble of his former command center. "Tell them," Jake said, "that the ceasefire will begin when every individual responsible for New Haven has been delivered to human custody for trial. Tell them that the demonstration of human capabilities will continue until we are satisfied that the lesson has been learned by every species in the galaxy." As Jake walked away from the broken Zephyrian commander, he thought about his brother, Danny, and the 50,000 other humans who had died at New Haven. Their deaths had revealed something about humanity that had been hidden for centuries. They were not the gentle giants that other species believed them to be. They were apex predators who had chosen to be peaceful, and when that choice was taken away from them, the galaxy would tremble. 3 months after the Zephyrian surrender, the galaxy had become a fundamentally different place. The myth of humanity as gentle, peaceful beings had been destroyed forever and replaced with a new understanding that would shape interstellar relations for generations to come. Humans were not weak pacifists who avoided conflict out of fear. They were apex predators who had chosen mercy as their default response to other species, and that choice could be permanently revoked for those who proved unworthy of it. Admiral Karen Brooks stood in her new office as Supreme Commander of the Human Protectorate and reviewed reports from across the galaxy. Crime rates had dropped to their lowest levels in recorded history as criminals realized that human justice was swift and absolute. Territorial disputes between alien races were being resolved through mediation rather than warfare because no species wanted to risk drawing human attention through unnecessary violence. "Admiral," said her aide Colonel Linda Ross, "we have received formal requests for protection from 47 different species in the past week. They are all offering complete transparency in their government operations and military capabilities in exchange for human security guarantees." Brooks nodded as she read through the requests. The galaxy had learned that humans were willing to extend their protection to any species that met certain basic standards of ethical behavior. The price was complete openness about their activities and adherence to human moral principles, but most races were eager to pay that price after seeing what happened to those who chose violence against innocents. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of his ship, which was now permanently stationed at the edge of former Zephyrian space. The UES Horizon served as both a patrol vessel and a reminder to any species that might consider testing human resolve. The aliens he encountered during his duties no longer saw humans as harmless diplomats. They saw them as sleeping dragons who had chosen to dream of peace but could awaken at any moment. "Captain," said Lisa Parker, who had been promoted to his second in command, "I have the monthly report from the Zephyrian rehabilitation centers. Their children are adapting well to human educational programs and are learning why their parents' actions were wrong. The adults are having more difficulty, but they are slowly accepting that their old ways led to nothing but suffering." Jake reviewed the report and felt a complex mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The Zephyrian species would survive, but they would never again be the conquering warriors they had once been. Their children were being taught human values of compassion and mercy while their military leaders served life sentences in human prisons. It was justice, but it came at the cost of revealing humanity's capacity for controlled ruthlessness. General Alex Carter had been appointed as the first human supreme military commander of the Galactic Federation and was tasked with preventing future conflicts through overwhelming deterrence. His forces patrolled trade routes that were now safer than they had been in centuries, and his mere presence at diplomatic negotiations was usually enough to ensure peaceful resolutions to disputes. General reported his intelligence chief, Major Kevin Stone. We have detected signs that some species are attempting to form secret alliances against human authority. The Vorthan Empire and the Crystalline Collective are reportedly sharing technology and discussing military cooperation. Carter studied the intelligence reports and made a decision that would have been unthinkable before the New Haven massacre. Dispatch Battle Group 7 to conduct training exercises in both the Vorthan and Crystalline systems, he ordered. Make sure they understand that we are aware of their activities and that secret alliances against human interests will be viewed as acts of aggression. Dr. Martin Hayes had been appointed as head of the new Department of Interspecies Ethics, which was responsible for ensuring that all Federation members met human standards for the treatment of their own populations. His teams conducted regular inspections of alien worlds and had the authority to impose sanctions or even military intervention if they found evidence of slavery, oppression, or genocide. Doctor, said his assistant Dr. Carol White, the inspection of the Andromedan Trade Consortium has revealed that they are using child labor in their mining operations. The conditions are horrible and some of the children are dying from exposure to toxic materials. Hayes reviewed the evidence and felt the same cold anger that had driven humanity to war against the Zephyrians. Issue an immediate cessation order for all mining operations, he commanded. Deploy humanitarian teams to rescue the children and establish medical facilities to treat the injured. If the Andromedans resist our intervention, authorize military action to protect the victims. Captain Sam Bishop commanded the dreadnought UES Retribution, which had become the flagship of the human fleet and a symbol of humanity's hidden strength. His ship patrolled the core systems of the galaxy, ensuring that the peace humanity had imposed through force of arms remained intact. Other species no longer questioned human authority because they had seen what happened to those who did. Captain, reported his communications officer, Lieutenant Tony Brooks, we are receiving a priority message from Earth Command. There has been an incident in the Outer Rim where pirates have attacked a convoy carrying refugee families from the former Zephyrian territories. Bishop felt his jaw tighten as he thought about innocent families being terrorized by criminals who thought they could operate beyond the reach of human justice. Set course for the Outer Rim maximum speed, he ordered. Send a message to the pirates informing them that they have attacked people under human protection. Tell them they have 12 hours to surrender themselves for trial or face immediate military action. Ryan Cole had been promoted to chief engineer of the entire human fleet and was responsible for maintaining the technological superiority that made human dominance possible. His ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within hours and strike with precision that left no room for retaliation or escape. The knowledge that humans possessed such capabilities kept potential aggressors peaceful through sheer terror. Chief, said his deputy engineer, Captain Lisa Turner, the new stealth frigates are ready for deployment. They can operate completely undetected in any star system and gather intelligence or eliminate threats without anyone knowing we were there. Cole reviewed the specifications of the new ships and marveled at how far human military technology had advanced in just 3 months of open warfare. Deploy them to monitor the border regions, he ordered. I want early warning of any species that might be planning aggressive actions against human interests, or our protected allies. Amy Turner had become head of the Galactic Communications Network, which monitored all interstellar transmissions for signs of developing threats or violations of human ethical standards. Her teams could intercept and decode any alien communication within hours and had prevented dozens of potential conflicts through early intervention. Director, said her chief analyst, Commander Paul Davis, we have intercepted communications from the hegemony of worlds suggesting they are planning to invade. The Peaceful Garden Coalition. The Garden Worlds have requested human protection, but the hegemony believes we will not intervene because the conflict does not directly involve human interests. Turner smiled grimly as she prepared to send a message that would end the hegemony's plans before they could begin. Send a priority transmission to the hegemony leadership, she ordered. Inform them that any act of aggression against species under human protection will be considered an act of war against humanity itself. Remind them what happened to the last species that tested our resolve as reports came in from across the galaxy. Jake Morrison realized that humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had created peace through strength and maintained it through the simple understanding that some choices carried consequences that could not be undone. Species that had warred against each other for millennia now cooperated because they feared human displeasure more than they hated their traditional enemies. Liza, he said as they stood together watching the stars from the bridge of the horizon, do you think we did the right thing? We saved countless lives by ending the cycle of warfare, but we did it by revealing that humans can be more terrifying than any nightmare their enemies ever imagined. Lisa was quiet for a long moment as she considered the question. Jake, she finally said, we gave the galaxy a choice. They could continue their wars and their cruelties and face the consequences, or they could choose to be better and receive our protection. Most of them chose to be better. That tells me we did the right thing. Jake nodded as he thought about his brother Danny and the 50,000 other humans who had died at New Haven. Their deaths had forced humanity to abandon the peaceful image they had maintained for centuries and reveal their true nature as the most dangerous species in the galaxy. But that revelation had also made it possible to create a lasting peace based on the understanding that mercy was a choice made by the strong, not a weakness displayed by the helpless. Captain, Amy reported from her communication station, I am receiving a message from a newly discovered species in the Gamma Quadrant. They have heard about human protection policies and are requesting admission to our alliance.